Welcome back to another episode of The Hardcore Casual with your boy, Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, an associate, a close family member, and a distant relative, an enemy, anyone in between. I appreciate all of them. The numbers are still growing, so thank you to all the new subscribers. And funny enough, there was an old subscriber who asked me if a former co-host of the show could make an appearance. I won't tell you who it was. I won't put them on blast, but I'm sure they'll be in the comments of this video, so you probably will see. I spoke with them. We was trying to get negotiations sorted out. They was basically asking for too many bananas, but we managed to agree a 70-30 deal on this occasion. 30% to myself, 70 to them, although we'll have to see what happens in the get back, but we managed to make it happen, unlike Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. But yeah, for now we're gonna see how it goes on this one, see what the reception's like. But for all the new subscribers, I would like to introduce you to Mbaku Panther. Now, back in the early days of the channel, he used to see him around. He would sort of be beside me, and we would I guess we do the shows together. In that sense, I was asked to bring him back. Now, probably a lot more trouble than he's worth, but we'll see what happens moving forward. There's a couple topics to talk on today, so I'm gonna keep him around. We'll see what we get out of it, and yeah, we'll see where it goes from there. But without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I guess the first major thing, I want to talk about 2 points. I'm going to kind of conflate 2 points into one here, both about next opponents, right? So David Benavidez obviously managed to beat Caleb Plant over the weekend, and as such, a lot of people are now calling for the Canelo Alvarez fight. No issue. The chances of that fight being called as a mandatory before October, when the WBC has their convention, not particularly likely. However, David's manager, Samson Lukowicz, has already confirmed. Now, I don't know how true this particularly is, but he said that they've already signed the fight for David Morrell Jr. As their next fight, which would, I guess, likely take place in and around that September-October time of the year. Now, if that does take place around then, I think, to me, that's a brilliant fight. I'd actually like it to be closer to like July, August time, so that he can maybe then get one more fight in before the end of the year. Keep busy, or any type of fight he wants. If he's taken those 2 fights back to back, any fight he chooses, I'm all for, to be totally honest with you. But then just to keep that activity up, and if he can kind of get through someone like a David Morrell Jr., then I definitely think he's got a lot more in store, and he's more in kin to be able to beat someone like Canelo Alvarez, or at least give him a tough time. Because David Morrell Jr., like, in terms of just skills, like, he's the truth. Skills, punch power, footwork, ring IQ, only 9-0, but I mean, yeah, the guy's a problem. 8-0, 9-0, one or the other. Now, similarly, on the other hand, going back to sort of the Canelo sweepstakes, Jaime Munguia's manager from the Xantha side of his promotions basically came out and said that the rumored Dimitri Bivol fight that was going to take place potentially in June with Jaime Munguia is not actually happening, which, thank God, to be totally honest. But he says it's because Dimitri Bivol isn't popular enough. Okay, so that I have to push back on. I'm like, okay, he beat the cash cow and then beat a second Mexican, 5-6 months after that, all last year. So realistically, his profile is as high as it needs to be. At this point, it's got to be at least on par with Jaime Munguia's, if not surpass that. I mean, you fight the cash cow, you get the eyes on you, then you go and you now have a second, big Mexican on your record so that Mexican American demographic is definitely going to know who you are. And then Jaime Munguia would be the third in that trilogy. But I guess clearly, number one, he didn't want that smoke, which again makes total sense, because you don't go from being 154 pounder just going up to light heavyweight and thinking it's all rosy up there. Like, you've still got work to do at 160 and you've got work to do at 168. So being at 175, all that was going to be was one of those free swings, basically. Like, you take that fight, you have, you take the loss, but it's a protected loss, it doesn't mean anything. Then you go back to fighting whoever you want to fight, and no one really questions you because you took the big fight when it was necessary. Yeah, I'm not really for that, but at least that fight isn't happening. That's the main thing. So that's what we can at least give thanks for in this instance. So it's Anthony Joshua fight week, and as such, it was almost like a kickoff day on Monday. So it was like a media scrum, had a little red carpet event in London. I was due to go, but I had some other things to take care of, so I decided to give it a pass. However, I saw all the people down there doing their thing. You had your IFLs, your seconds out, ID Boxing, I think Boxing King Media was there also. October Red was there. She got some very good interviews. If you haven't seen those, I'm going to leave her channel down below. Check out some of the latest interviews, because there was definitely some insightful ones that took place. One thing that I think a lot of people obviously have listened to is Anthony Joshua essentially saying that if he loses this fight to Jermaine Franklin, that he'll retire. Now, to be honest, I think it's all said tongue-in-cheek, like he said it with a smile on his face, but ultimately I think what he really is looking at is that, well, I don't have to be in this position, so if I'm not good enough to beat this guy, or to at least to at least show that there's still something left in me, I'm cool to walk away, because I've got so many other things I can be doing. But ultimately, it's always going to be in my hands whether I leave or not. Like, no one's going to be able to just tell me, yeah, just retire or whatever. Like, if I want to retire, I'll retire. If I don't, I don't. I'm in control of me, my faculties. I've got all the money in the world that I've made for myself. That basically it is what it is. I can do as I please. So with that being said, like, I don't particularly blame him. Now, Jermaine Franklin, from all intents and purposes of what I've heard, is looking in shape at the moment, abs and all sorts. And some people saying, oh, like, but when you're a fat guy and you lose all that weight, it takes something out of you, punch resist. Well, the thing is, Jermaine Franklin wasn't actually the fat guy to start off with. Like, he put on a lot of weight throughout the years, as opposed to being like an Andy Ruiz who just always been big and then tried to lose weight for an aesthetic. Jermaine Franklin put on weight and has been fighting as a heavier guy outside of his actual body type and genetics. So him being a lot smaller or a lot slimmer would actually probably play better into his hands and his skill set. Now, it might not necessarily give him the best punch resistance, but his frame will just be moving naturally, because that's how he is as an athlete. It's going to be interesting, like, the mindset of both. See, like, Jermaine Franklin is not coming into this fight as if he is just the tune-up, and you can tell that from him and his demeanor. Like, he doesn't view himself in that way. And even if you wanted to look at him as a gatekeeper or not a very good heavyweight, I think he's got the necessary mentality to give anyone a hard night, because he's not coming in there like, okay, my assignment is just to see how I do. Like, his assignment to him is to win, is to shock the world, is to upset the world. Now, I don't really think that's on the cards, but for as long as it lasts, I do believe this will actually be a very entertaining fight. I can't see it being a boring one. I can't see it being one guy just laying on the ropes, taking a beating, maybe hoping for a pot shot here or there. Like, I can see this being a bit back and forth, especially sort of within the first few rounds. But But yeah, like in terms of Joshua, even his mindset about, you know, things, I'm actually liking what I'm hearing. Like everything just seems like all the facades, all the maybe the PC, all the trying to please people, that's all out the window now, and you're just hearing it as it needs to be, and it's refreshing to hear. So I just want to see basically how that translates in the press conference a little later on today, how that translates in the ring and the weekend. And again, I will be there, so I will be looking forward to watching it. And I like the fact that he didn't get involved in the Tyson Fury Usyk fight talk either. Like, you know, he said, let them man do them, I'm gonna do me, whatever happens. Like, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, we'll see what happens moving forward, but good on both of them, and I'm expecting a good show. All right, so last thing I want to talk about today, I literally about 2 hours ago, 2.5 hours, watched a part 1 between Simon Jordan and Frank Warren, whereby Simon Jordan gets to the bottom of the Fury versus Usyk situation. So I'm not going to go through it point by point, because that's for you to watch the video, see for yourself. I've got to commend Simon Jordan on one thing. Like, he did ask the questions that needed to be asked, so I want to commend him on that. But he always said that his job is to ask the questions and then disseminate the answers, dissect them, and then, you know, talk through the answers to get to, you know, the truth of a situation. I don't really feel he did that much in this. Like, so he would ask a question, at times he would jump in, but only to clarify a point that was being made at that particular time, or to get a brief synopsis on maybe a timeline, just to correct something to make sure that it was fresh in his mind. But there wasn't a lot that he challenged. There's loads of answers. For instance, at one point Frank Warren said, you know, he felt that the situation changed when Usyk's team realized that Tyson Fury would be ready for the 29th, because, you know, he's fit, he's been in training, he's got his sparring partners, he's got his coaches and stuff, whatnot. Well, at that particular point, I don't understand why Simon wouldn't then say, well, Frank, if that's the case, why is his trainer on camera saying that he's only here for Lawrence Okoli, and that he's actually leaving the country on the 28th because the fight was never signed and he was never here to work with Tyson Fury? There were so many times where you could challenge something that Frank Warren said where he didn't. And I get it, because I guess you hold Frank to a bit of a higher standard than you hold Eddie, definitely to more of a higher standard than you hold Ben. But Ben, you kind of have to keep a bit more on side, because obviously TalkSport is owned by Sky. You know, Spencer Oliver is a boxer pundit or member of the team, so maybe you don't want to necessarily go into that too deep. Fine, cool, it makes sense. But there was a lot more. I feel like there was a lot more pushback that could have happened. Like, one thing that I will credit Simon Jordan on in this interview, though, to give him his props, is Frank was desperate to use the transcribe of the conversation between the talks, him and Krasiuk on TalkSport, and, you know, the same thing that he did with Umar from IFL and Danny Flexen from Seconds Out and those guys. And Simon he almost put that to the side. He almost like stopped Frank from you. No, forget that. Like, I want to stick on this. And he did kind of keep it to the relevant topic. So Frank wasn't able to just use the narrative he wanted to use throughout. So I will give Simon his credit on that. But again, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, okay, so Simon's gonna, you know, he's really gonna get into the minutiae of this. I wasn't expecting him to go as hard as he did on Eddie Hearn, because I understand there's a whole different level there, and there's more of a personal element between those two also. But I just thought that there was more questions that could have been delved into, answers that needed more probing, just from listening to the two sides and even listening to previous conversations with Frank Warren especially, some of those answers weren't factually correct. And I'm sure that if you've been keeping up with the subject, as Simon Jordan is quote unquote paid to do, as you know, being this boxing guy for TalkSport and whatnot, I would expect him to have known that some of these answers they needed further investigation. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I was quite happy in the sense that maybe, you know, Frank had a situation where he didn't get everything his own way, but yeah, there just wasn't enough of a conversation for me to really, you know, delve into. And then they still sort of somehow managed to bring it back to Anthony Joshua at points with the whole November-December thing, which ultimately, if you think about it, I think this interview itself would even tell you that Frank Warren, as much as he says, oh, you know, Joshua didn't want it, he had no trainer, they pissed about for 6 weeks and whatnot getting it done. Well, you said earlier, right, so Fury wants to be out in November or December. He can't fight Usyk at that time because Usyk says that, you know, obviously just had a hard fight. That's basically 4 months later. He needs a little more time, so to do it in February, right? So if Usyk is basically, you know, not in a state to do it at that time, well then why would Anthony Joshua, when they both fought in the exact same fight? Like they both went hell for leather for 12 rounds with each other, you know. So if Usyk's got injuries and is potentially a little banged up or whatever, well surely Joshua would be as well, right? So why would you then be saying, oh well, that's the person that I'm gonna now call out, unless you was expecting to get a half-cooked opponent in either situation? So that kind of tells you that yeah, that whole situation was bogus. But there was enough evidence there, and even enough for, again, Simon to be able to push back on Frank on certain points, even within that part of the conversation, to say, well, I'm not really sure that, you know, now what you're saying tallies up with how it was, Frank. But obviously he's still got to keep him fairly sweet, because they had the second half of an interview to do. You know, he basically said, you know, keep Fury off. Frank said that social media is the reason the fight didn't happen. And then it was like, well, ultimately, so if social media is the reason the fight didn't happen, then inadvertently you are basically, and you know, in a roundabout way, without saying it, you are saying, well, Tyson Fury is the reason the fight didn't happen, because he was the one that brought everything to social media. Like no one else was speaking and doing whatever with regards to this fight until he came out talking about 70-30, and then you know, and then actually, you know what, yeah, there was a rematch, but don't worry about that, let's get that out of there. And then all of the social media antics started with Fury, outside of obviously the initial part when Fury had said nothing and Usyk's like, well, yo, like, what's going on, are we doing this? Because to be fair, I will actually give him that, because Usyk did, you know, it wasn't the start. Fury started off the social things, and then he decided to go quiet for like 4 months. So Usyk's like, yo, Belly, where are you? Like, I'm coming for you. But that wasn't anything to do with negotiations. That's just two fighters exchanging funny quips at each other at that particular point. That's not really an issue. It's when you started doing negotiations in public of social media is where things started going awry, and that was only down to one person. So yeah, with regards to all of that, I mean, look, I'd just say it's an interesting watch. I thought I'd get more from it. The second half is probably going to be a lot better, because it's not about damage control. It will probably just be about other situations. But yeah, watch it for yourselves. Tell me what you think down below, and we'll kind of leave it there for now. We're gonna see if this guy gets invited back next week, depending on what the comment sections say. But yeah, it wasn't a cheap negotiation, so I'm not gonna be too keen to have him back if he don't pull his weight in the promotions. That being said, I'm gonna leave it there, because I want to watch this press conference. I'll probably drop another video later on today, or definitely there'll be one tomorrow if not. But thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, as I said before, and as always, Hardcore Casual out.